the Etherpad link if anybody's willing. Now's a really good time to volunteer if you're willing. We only need actions to be minuted. We don't need the blow-by-blow details because the meeting is recorded, of course. So feel free to jump in and volunteer. Thank you, Jonathan. Well done. So the link to the Etherpad is at the top. If that works for you, that's great. If that doesn't work for you, you can just take notes and email them to us later. But the Etherpad works pretty well, I think.
Yeah, I'm on Etherpad.
Fantastic. Thank you. So that's good. Again, we only really need kind of decisions, actions, that kind of thing minuted. The rest is fine. Right, I can keep an eye on the Jabber.
I'll also be keeping an eye on the Jabber.
Yeah, so lots of eyes on Jabber. And I'll be keeping an eye on Jabber with me as two different kinds of login. Okay, so I think with that, we're kind of ready to rock and roll. Am I right, DKG?
Yep, looks good to me.
Okay, great. So welcome. This is the OpenPGP session, not in Madrid, sadly, but hopefully that'll get fixed over time. We have a note taker. Thank you again, Jonathan. This is the links to the various bits and pieces about the working groups and the mailing list and the charter, etc., and the Etherpad notes and so on. The meeting materials, the slides are all uploaded. So for those people presenting, you can probably find it most easy to use the share pre-uploaded slides button, and we can direct you towards that if need be when we get there. So this is the note well. So if you've been at other IETF sessions, you may have seen this. There's a whole bunch of things a good IETF participant will pay attention to, including IPO rules and being reasonable with one another and being behaving well. So there's a whole bunch of text around that you probably should make yourself familiar with if you're involved in the IETF to any degree. But again, you should have seen this at the start of many sessions. And my last slide is our agenda. We're in item 0. And we will be next up with Paul Wouters will summarize excuse me, the recent changes in the crypto refresh draft, which is our main piece of chartered work, our sole piece of chartered work really. Then Daniel will talk about some more choices that we have to make still, and what's to be done. Daniel DKG will cover another bit. And then Justus will talk about interop test suites. Just to describe what's happened recently, I guess, for those who maybe are not following the mailing list that well or that closely, we have a design team which consists of the chairs and a bunch of OpenPGP, or people who implement OpenPGP, and we have about 3 or 4 different implementations represented, plus the editors of the documents. That's Paul mainly as a non-implementer. And actually, we've been meeting weekly in the last couple of months, making pretty good progress and working kind of very productively together. I think everybody's been quite open and collaborative. And now that's resulted in a draft that we just submitted a couple of weeks before the session. The design team is an IETF design team, which kind of means it's a closed group, but the mailing list for the design team, the archive is open. So everybody can read the messages to that design team archive, which mostly consists of meeting notes every week. And again, I'd like to thank the people who've been involved in that, because it's been very productive. People have set aside past arguments in some cases and worked ahead, which is great. So I'm just going to leave a minute then to see if anybody wants to agenda bash, or DKG, if you have anything other chair-like wisdom to pass on, that would be, now's a good time.
I think I got nothing. You covered it. Thank you, Stephen.
Okay, so anybody want to bash the agenda? Okay, if not, we'll start to move on to Paul then. So one other note is that unfortunately I have to apologize. I need to leave after about an hour, so I might make to the end of the agenda, but I might have to just bail a bit before the end. Apologies again. It's just a local interrupt I can't kind of avoid. And DKG is aware of that and willing to do without me for the end, which should be no problem. So again, apologies in advance if I have to bail just a few minutes before the end of the session. Okay, so with that, we're on to Paul. So Paul, I'm stopping sharing slides. If you want to share your audio, video, and again, the share preloaded slides button is just beside the join queue button, and you should have a choice to pick your slides to share. There's Paul's video.
If you'd rather, I can run the slides and you just say next.
It should work. I'm not hearing your audio yet, Paul. There we go. Yeah, you have to.
There we go. Okay, sorry. It's a meet echo thing. Daniel, if you can just share the slide, that would be great.
Okay, I'll hop off and leave it to you.
Okay, next page. Quick overview, but I will skip it. Next page. Okay, so Stefan mentioned this a little bit already, so just a really quick history of what happened. We opened a working group to work on RFC 4880 BIS. That work continued for a while, and then after a while there were too many things happening, but that also caused that nothing was happening anymore, and it sort of stalled. So what happened was, next slide, is that the working group got restarted. So one of the things was that Stephen Farrell was added as a working group chair, and I was added as a document author in an editor role, to try and sort of add more neutrality to the discussion and sort of try to stick to the IETF process and move along. And to make this start more clean, is what we did was we took the items that was already in the BIS document, but started from RFC 4880 from scratch. And so we then started adding chunks of, what we thought was agreed upon work by the working group, and started adding that into the crypto refresh document. And that stepped onward for a bit. It started making some progress, but then it also sort of slowly became bogged down in discussion, because it's very easy to end up in endless discussions when there's lots of people and lots of opinions and lots of good discussion happening. But we needed more of a basis to continue. So next slide. To avoid making the same mistake again, what we did was we added this design team that Stephen already mentioned. And this allowed us to get a few more focused discussion going, a few more items ticked off, and more items from the BIS document merged into the crypto refresh. It stuck to weekly meetings, and so there's a bit of a good push to get things done and to have more regular face-to-face time, get good decisions made that especially all the implementers agreed on. And since the design team is mostly implementers and a few people steering the process, that gave us actually a much better basis to continue the work and to pull everything in. So that's sort of where we are. We've pulled in most of the old BIS document. We added some new things along the way as well, and I think the work is progressing nicely. So next slide. But just to reiterate, the design team workflow and everything that's being done is completely open and transparent. You can see all of these links that tells you what we're doing. We're using Git, and we're trying to make good Git commits that are readable per issue, that make the discussion a little easier to follow. We're using a tracker with merge requests or PRs. We're using topic branches to get these chunks of new text into the document. We're having discussions on a tracker there, and everybody is welcome to join that process. It might just be that we upvote or downvote some of that work in the design team to either be postponed for later, or we might say that it's for now out of scope or not for the crypto refresh document, but more suited for another document. Or we'll obviously take the obvious fixes that people are proposing in. So do not feel excluded as a working group. Everybody's still there. The output of this work will also be the input to the working group. We're just trying to make sure that we're not getting stuck again with there's a sort of 4-month cadence of lots of people be having a lot of interest and then sort of losing interest until the next IETF meeting comes, and meanwhile a lot of issues are stuck. So with that said, next slide. Where are we? Most of the 4880 BIS has been merged into the crypto refresher. I think we're now actually technically further than we were, except that there are still some things we need to just pull in, some last minute things. If you're curious, most of that work was tracked in a step-by-step branch that was created to sort of logically pull the data out of the old BIS document into the new crypto refresh work. Some work we sort of postponed on purpose, such as the mandatory to implement, because we were both waiting to see what happens generally in the IETF with from things like post-quantum to where we add to NIST recommendations to other input. But that's also something that is fairly easy to change, and we expected that discussion will happen anyway. So that is something that we expect to have a more full open PHP working group discussion about. But at least some sort of the menial tasks, the little clarifications and updates and rewrites and making fancier tables to make it more readable, all of those things we can now more quickly go through. Those have been done. And we're continuing to move this process. So a few more details. Next slide. You can see that Daniel had sent out an email early with some of this data in it already. So the notable work done between the last two versions of the crypto refresh is that the AD packet got defined and slightly updated. It was actually a little more work than I expected. AD protection of secret key material, intended recipient subpacket, ASCII v5 for AED, the Archon2 got added, the curves, the v5.19.4 got added, and there was some slight, fairly long discussion actually about how the exact format should be encoded and what the best ways were, especially because some implementations implemented something slightly different or different from what we would like to see. We had good discussions with all the implementers and managed to move that forward. That was actually really great. Some other things, drop questionable advice about dropping keys. But again, the previous slide showed the links where you can see all the commits and merge PRs to get a full detailed look on what we've done. So next slide. Some notable work not done. Like I said, mandatory to implement. There's going to be a presentation after this about this. V5 signatures. We have a fairly active discussion on what to do there in issue 45, if you're interested. V5 keys is also an ongoing issue. I think we're almost there, but there's still some things in the pipeline before we're fully done. So you can see that on the merge request or PR 7789. So expect that to sort of flow into the document next week or the week after. Next slide. There were some things that was done after the last draft was published, because we have been meeting every week, mostly still. So some more clarifications, some terminology update, like not talk about NIST curves, because who knows what NIST curves are in this document 5 years from now when NIST has updated their guidance. Some encoding on MPIs and values have been specified more carefully to map the new algorithms. And sort of that's where we are. So next slide. So we think this process is working. We think we're seeing good progress, and we like to continue this way. But if anyone has any advice or comments or suggestions about this process of the design team, then please let us know, so we can maybe adapt and be more inclusive. With that, I think this is sort of an overview. The next slide is the end, I think. Or this is the last slide, yeah. Okay, so any questions, comments? Then I'll give it back to the chairs.
So I guess I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with how to hit the join queue button. There's a little hand at the top left of your screen that if you float over, it says join queue. So if anybody wants to do that, to ask questions about the current draft or design team process, this is a great time to do it. And if not, we can rattle through the agenda and revisit any topics like that at any other business as well. So I guess next up is Daniel. Daniel, there you go.
Do you want to drive the slides?
Yeah, I'll try.
Great.
I clicked the button. I don't know what I need to do after that.
When you click share preloaded slides, it should show you a list of options.
Yes, now it does.
So DKG, we get a pop-up that allows us to give him permission after he requests it.
I didn't see that.
I was too quick for you, that's why.
Share my video as well. There we go. Hello. Yes, it's a bit cut off. Is that the case for you as well? No.
All looks good here.
I think it looks okay.
For me, the slides are a bit cut off, but that's fine. I know what's on them. Okay, so yeah, this presentation is about. First, I'll give a bit of an overview of the cryptographic algorithms that were in RFC 4880 and 6637, which this crypto refresh is meant to replace, right? And then I'll give an overview of the sort of the current consensus, more or less, of the design team of which algorithms should be mandatory or recommended to implement. Some of it is, still more tentative than other things, or some of these things have had more or less discussion, but I'll try to make that clear. Okay, so then as for the cryptographic algorithms in RFC 4880, before you all fall off your chairs, at least for the people that are not familiar with RFC 4880, this document was released in 2007. So, high time for an update. But anyway, RFC 4880 says that you must implement BSA for signing. You must implement Algomal for public key encryption. You must implement SHA-1 for hashing. You must implement triple DES for symmetric encryption. You must implement the CFB mode of encryption. And you must implement the modification detection code, or MDC, which is a method of integrity protection using SHA-1 and then encrypt. So, obviously not really up to, modern standards of authenticated encryption. But okay, we'll get to that. And then finally, it says that, finally, v4 keys, which are the latest version in RFC 4880, use SHA-1 for fingerprints as well. Then it does say you should implement RSA, and AES 128, which is at least good. It also says you should implement cast5 and zip. And zip is also the default in the sense that if a key doesn't specify any preferences, then the implementation can assume that it prefers zip, although it's not mandatory to use compression. But obviously, given the compression attacks that have come out more recently, it's not ideal. And then finally, the strongest method of string to key or password-based key derivation is salted and iterated hashing, for which you can use any of the hashes in the standard, including SHA-1 or SHA-256. But again, it's obviously those hashing algorithms are way too fast, and it's not a very strong method of key derivation. Then to look on the bright side of RFC 480 at least, it does say that you must not use MD5 when signing, although you may still verify it, according to this document at least. To be fair, most implementations are already way stricter than this. They already, I believe all implementations already reject MD5 signatures using MD5, and some implementations also reject SHA-1 signatures. And also, just to go back for a second to the previous slide, the algorithms that are used in practice is usually either RSA or ECC, often using Curve 25519 already, even though it's not in any released standard yet. And of course, all the implementations are already using AES, so it's not quite as bad as this slide may make it seem, but for sure, an update was needed. Then RFC 480 does say that you must not use a symmetric algorithm that's not in the recipient key's algorithm preferences. So, the key can say that it prefers AES, and all implementations do, I believe. However, it does say that since triple des is must implement, then it's sort of implicitly in the preferences, and you can always use it. And then finally, it says that you should not implement keys of less than 1024 bits, and that goes for DSA, Algomal, and RSA. Then in RFC 6637, which is ECC or elliptic curve cryptography in OpenPGP, it says that you must implement ECDSA for signing and ECDH for public key encryption. You must implement NIST curve P256. You must implement SHA-256 and AES 128. And as a bonus, SHA-1 must not be used when using ECC. So this RFC sort of, even though it's about ECC, it's kind of does or did update the mandatory algorithms, which is good. And then it also says that you should implement P521, and you should implement SHA-384 and SHA-512. And it also says you should implement AES-256. Okay, then going ahead to the crypto refresh, and this, I believe, sort of, as I said, represents the consensus of the design team. But if I misrepresent anything, then you can call me out afterwards. So what we would like to say in the crypto refresh is that you must implement EDDSA for signing and ECDH, both using Curve 25519. and you should implement curve 448. Then the hashing algorithms are the same as 6637, and similarly for the AES algorithms. Then it says you must implement AAD for authenticated encryption. Then the specific mode of AAD encryption has not had that much discussion in the design team, but I think it would make sense to require implementing OCB, since it's a CFRG requirement. Currently in the draft, there's OCB and EAX, but EAX is not a CFRG recommendation. So to me, it would make sense to require OCB, but again, this is still up for debate. Then V5 keys, which are new in this crypto refresh, use SHA-2 for fingerprints, which is, well, a big part of the reason for creating V5 keys in the first place. And then finally, the compression algorithm has been updated from zip to zlib, but uncompressed is now the default if the key doesn't specify any preferences. And then Argon 2 is also recommended for password-based key derivation, both for encrypted secret keys and also for messages encrypted with a password. Then there are also some deprecations that we would like to do in the crypto refresh. This again has not had as much debate as some of the other stuff, but this is basically one proposal. So that would be to say that implementations must not generate RSA keys of less than 2048 bits, must not encrypt, sign, or verify using less than 1024 bits keys, RSA keys, should not encrypt, sign, or verify using less than 2048 bit RSA keys, and should not decrypt using less than 1024 bit RSA keys. And then finally, and this is perhaps most controversial, to say that implementations must not implement DSA or algomal at all, meaning not generate, encrypt, sign, verify, or decrypt. The main reason being, so there has been one paper coming out about vulnerabilities in algomal stemming from differences across different implementations. And then my colleague Lara Busacchini has also is also publishing some research about key validation issues or key override attacks using both DSA and algomal. And basically, DSA and algomal keys are very difficult to verify and basically use securely. And in addition to that, most of the DSA and algomal keys out there are 1024-bit keys. So most of them are essentially insecure anyway, or should not be considered very secure. But again, this is still up for debate. Okay, then part 2 of deprecations is we would like to say that you must not use MD5, SHA-1, and RIPE-MD when signing. And I believe there's consensus on this, or it's less controversial. And you must not use MD5, SHA-1, or RIPE-MD when verifying new signatures, and you should not use them when verifying old signatures, where old is defined as predating the discovery of vulnerabilities in those specific algorithms, if you're sure that the signature has been under your control since that time, basically. And then we would like to say that implementations must not encrypt data with IDEA, triple DES, or Cas5, but may still decrypt data, and must not use simple string-to-key key derivation, meaning the unsalted variant, and should not use salted but uniterated or non-iterated string-to-key key derivation unless the implementation knows that the passphrase is basically a high entropy randomly generated string, for example. Okay, then what's still left, at least in terms of algorithm choices for the crypto refresh? Well, one discussion that still needs to happen, perhaps in the working group at least, is on brain pool curves. I believe the consensus in the design team is more or less that it's not a CFRG recommendation. The charter of this working group does explicitly point out that the goal of the working group is to add curves that are CFRG recommendations. So that might exclude the brain pool curves, but okay, that's still up for discussion. And then similarly, for the mandatory to implement algorithms, there was some question of do we want to require algorithms such that a minimal implementation is FIPS compliant? And for now, we've sort of decided not to, because there is a draft out from NIST which includes curve 25509 and curve 448. So hopefully that will become a final document sooner rather than later. And then finally, there's still some open question about should AS256 be mandatory to implement. The primary argument being to prepare for post-quantum crypto, given Shor's algorithm and halving the search space. That being said, the counter argument would be that to be post-quantum resistant, we would need to do a lot more. Also, add post-quantum public key encryption algorithms, etc. Which brings me to the next slide, which is what's next after this crypto refresh. Meaning, if we were to recharter the RFC after the working group after this RFC has been released, in my mind, post-quantum cryptography would be one of the most obvious things to work on next. And then similarly, perfect forward secrecy may be something to look at. Both of these things, though, would require still a lot more work. And in my personal opinion, the work that has been done in this crypto refresh is already very important, and to me it makes sense to release an RFC before these items. Okay, That's all from me. Any questions?
So thanks, Daniel. I just as as a chair-like thing, we really are keen to get feedback from the broader working group about these design team ideas. I mean, we can kick off a thread in the mailing list, but now is a really good chance, and I'd really be happy to get feedback, whether it's positive, negative, or whatever, as to this. And again, if you kind of agree with these choices, that's good feedback. If you disagree with them, that's also good feedback. So please do join the queue and/or chat in Jabber if you have any such feedback. I think this is an important one to get broader than the design team's input. And we have people in the queue, so that's great. So Quinn, go ahead. I'm not seeing you sending audio, Quinn.
Quinn, I think you need to turn on your own audio. We can't turn on your audio for you. That would be a surveillance tool.
And again, if somebody has audio issues, you can feel free to type in Jabber and we can relay if need be. So Quinn, if you're having audio issues, maybe we'll jump over to Jonathan and but stay in the queue and as you try to resolve things. Jonathan.
So you mentioned post-quantum. Do you figure that would be done after publishing the crypto refresh, that it would be an update after that, or are you going to be holding the crypto refresh until after the NIST process completes?
I would imagine the former. I would imagine that this would be one of the first items after this RFC. I don't think it's I don't think it's worth it to hold this RFC because as I said, there are already many updates to the cryptographic algorithms in this crypto refresh that are long overdue, in my personal opinion. So I think it's worth it to get that out, even without the post-quantum algorithms, also given that the NIST competition, if you will, is still not completed, so it might still take a while to get that done.
Okay, Quinn, I guess, and just as a reminder also, folks, you need to take yourself out of the queue, if you would, by clicking again on the hand button when you're done. That helps us do the queue engine. Thanks, Jonathan. Yeah. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Stephen. Sorry for that. I just admitted myself. I applauding the team for working on this. I think the work has been done really nicely. I see a lot of good stuff over there. I really do hope, and we have some options so that people who want to use FIPS validated modules for their security purposes to be able to get approved or allowed in many places outside US government as well. I know in Europe, in Asia, in many places, but for sure I don't know exactly how it is been used in what places, but I expect they've been used everywhere and a lot. And that applies to PGP software as well. For the OCP, personally, I like it, but right now we don't have a plan to prove it. So for the curves, we want to prove the curves and the new ADSA signatures with those two curves from the CFRG. And we thank you, CFRG, for doing that, making faster curves and with more properties that people like. So I expect those curves and signature algorithms will be approved at some point officially in the future. Right now you cannot get them validated yet because it's not FIPS officially approved yet. We're waiting for a big signature on it, and You know, it's been a while. So I'm on behalf of NIST, I'm sorry for that. I think it needs to be speed up. For the I don't think we're going to prove EAX either. We haven't talked about that for a while, because right now we expect to have a new algorithms or few for the lightweight crypto, and some of them might be just good at general purpose use as well. So I just be patient and wait for that. I think we will have one or two or so good candidates for lightweight crypto coming out in the near future. GCM is okay. GCM is good. We don't have any plan to remove it. It's good.
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks a lot for your comments. Yeah, so GCM is not currently in the crypto refresh. I suppose that could still be a topic for discussion if people feel that having a NIST approved authenticated encryption mode is valuable. We do implement it in OpenPGP.js and GopenPGP as an experimental module or mode, even though, of course, GCM is not experimental, but in the context of OpenPGP, it is. But yeah.
We could, if the team agree to, you know, we could have OCP or something else, you know, another good crypto to be in the recommended should implement column.
Yeah, makes sense.
Great, thanks, Quinn. And again, if you can DQ yourself after when you're done, that helps. So I think Ben's.
Okay, I'll do. Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you a lot.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to hop in on the post-quantum crypto topic because that had come up a little bit earlier. So we are currently working to charter a semi-dedicated working group for the word maintenance has been used, it's not a great word, but for like sort of adding the ability to use post-quantum crypto to algorithms and protocols, or protocols mostly, that don't currently support it and do not have a better home. Obviously, if this working group is going to stay open, that would be a fine place to add post-quantum crypto to PGP. But this other working group that we're working on will be a body of expertise in that general topic, and we would want to be able to coordinate with them when we do start picking up the post-quantum work. But I agree with you that we should not try to do it in the current document that we're working on. So thanks.
Makes sense. Yeah, we should collaborate on that, obviously.
Hi, Paul, speaking just as an individual, I just want to remind people as well that whatever we decide for the mandatory to implement, even though it's a base in the document that we're producing, we should also, in parallel, revise these anyway. And so maybe 6 months or 12 months after after this RFC is published, we will do an update to the mandatory to implement section. I have done those kind of documents for DNSSEC, for IKE, for IPsec. That is a very common way of doing it, and then making sure that the IANA registries have enough information that implementers can go there and see why certain, what the status is of certain algorithms, and why they might have been like deprecated.
Yeah, I believe DKG has also been working on updating those tables also indeed so that we can update them in the IANA tables without necessarily releasing a new document, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, part of the updates that are in Crypto Refresh is changing the rules for how we add items to these tables to loosen them up a little bit. It had been relatively strict before, and I think we're moving in the direction of it being looser.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I don't see anybody else in the queue. I mean, I guess probably a good action to put on the chairs and design team members, I guess, is to send a summary about this MTI topic to the working group list, because I do expect to be more discussion needed just to check everybody's ideas about this. So that's probably a useful one for the notes, is just to put an action on the chairs to create or start a mail thread when the design team thinks it's finished with the MTI topic, just to validate that with the list. And if there's nobody else in queue, I guess that brings us to the next one, which is another Daniel.
Hi, folks. I'm going to try sending video here. We'll see if my laptop can handle it. So this is just a brief discussion about the stateless OpenPGP interface, which is a command line interface. This is not technically in chartered work for this working group, but the idea is that it is an abstract interface for the things that people might want from OpenPGP, that is the users of OpenPGP, and it is deliberately agnostic to some of the wire format details. It's called the Stateless OpenPGP Interface, so we abbreviate that to SOP, and it's stateless, meaning that there's no weird side effects, right? That everything that you specify is going to be directly there. It's on the command line. So why am I talking about this here, given that it's not in charter? I'm mentioning it because it has proven to be useful for interoperability testing. And that's something that we care about a lot as we're building this Crypto Refresh draft. We want to make sure that we actually have functional implementations. I think it also is helpful in clarifying the concepts that users of OpenPGP are likely to want to do. And it tries to be very simple in describing behaviors that users will find useful. And hopefully it will encourage best practices and implementations as well, to ensure that things behave the way that we sort of expect them to. This could help with algorithm deprecation as well as support for new algorithms. Again, it's stateless because we really want to make sure that there's no strange side effects, that if you run it once, you get the sort of the same thing. This does not mean it's the right way to use it, that you should always use something like SOP in an implementation, but it is definitely useful for exercising implementations to make sure that they do what people expect. We also think that the reason that we chose a command line, sorry, Daniel, I think I'm getting echo from your audio. Thanks. We chose a command line because it's sort of a common denominator. We have lots of different implementations that are in different languages, and it would be nice to make sure that we can test them with each other without having one particular language be the framework that everybody has to sort of push themselves into. Pretty much everybody can build a command line tool. At the moment, the SOP draft is focused on data management. There is a secret key and certificate generation utility in it. The interface describes how to encrypt and decrypt data. Again, very, very minimal controls. It's not the kind of thing you can say, do it with this particular algorithm. We just want to say, do it, and then see what it was generated by default. And then can other implementations read the encrypted data. We also do signature and verification. So it's really focused on data management. It doesn't get into any of the funky certificate stuff at the moment. So here's some examples of how you would use it on the command line. Ben,
hey, DKG, sorry to jump in.
Speaking.
Your audio is getting a little choppy, so maybe if you turn off your video, your laptop will have more CPU for the audio cycle.
Thank you. I turned off my video. Hopefully this will be better. Appreciate the heads up. Yeah, so this is an example of how how you might use SOP. There's a key generation. You can extract the public key, the certificate from the secret key. You can sign, verify, encrypt, etc. So hopefully that makes some sense. If you just take a look at that, you can see the standard input and standard output are used there. Right, so why do we care about this with the crypto refresh document? We care because we don't want to expose the algorithm-specific details, the version-specific details, but we do want to see whether you can consume objects that are created like this. So that means that the interop test suite can take a wire format object and say, hey, who can read this thing? Or who can encrypt to this key? And we found that that's pretty useful in identifying incompatibilities, actually with the existing RFC 4880. And hopefully it will be more useful going forward with the stuff that's in the crypto refresh as well. So if folks see issues or concerns with this, I hope you'll speak up, and we can propose changes to the framework as well as new kinds of tests. Eustace will talk about the tests a little bit later. A couple of things about what might change in SOP in the future. One thing that's missing is inline signatures. Current SOP draft really expects to work with detached signatures. So you have the data that's signed and you have a separate signature. This is much cleaner to reason about. But in fact, we do have in OpenPGP bundled signature and message objects. And we have a history of some kinds of failure with that. We need to figure out how to represent that in SOP, and we haven't done it yet. It's issue 25. The links are in the slides. There will be a link at the end as well if you want to see that. One thing that's been really interesting over the last year is we have 3 different language-specific frameworks. So if you're writing an OpenPGP implementation in Java, in Rust, or in Python, you can pull in these language-specific frameworks, and they'll auto-generate the command line interface for you. In general, the language-specific frameworks are kind of idiomatic for the specific language, which I think is good. There's been some talk about trying to write up a C framework for it, so you could use an implementation as a shared library. That hasn't been done yet, but if you want to help work on that, that's something that would also be useful. Or in any other language, feel free to try to build something that maps to this interface. Should make things easier. Other thing that has been sort of pending for a while, but nobody's bothered to specify it, are certificate management functions. So again, we've really only been handling data management thus far, but it might be nice to be able to merge certificates together. If certificates have multiple certifications in them, you'd like to merge them together and get the union of those verifications. Validation of user IDs, people call the web of trust. Maintaining a certificate, so if you have the secret key, do you need to do any updates to it? Like, what if it's advertising support for MD5? It'd be nice to be able to say, no, let's remove that advertisement. Issuing revocations, certifying other user IDs, that sort of thing. Adding subkeys, maybe. These are things that might be useful to add, but we don't need to get into the details here. Hopefully, folks will consider doing that on the issue tracker. The recent update that was pushed out a couple of weeks ago has very minor changes, a little bit of tweaking, letting you use multiple secret keys where you could used to only be able to use one, and a bit more expanded output for the version function, which will help report better detail in the test suite. So that's a rough overview of what SOP is, what the stateless OpenPGP interface is. I hope folks will take a look at that. If you're an implementer and you haven't got a SOP implementation, or no one's written one for you, I encourage you to take a look. The more that you have a SOP implementation that you feel comfortable with, the better represented you'll be in the interop testing. So if folks have questions about SOP itself, I'm happy to take them now. I believe Eustace will talk about the most exciting use of SOP in the next presentation, which is the interop test suite. Anybody have any thoughts or suggestions? I am happy to cede the ground for Eustace if you want to come up for the next talk.
So I also want to mention that the idea of having language-specific APIs kind of standardized by SOP is also useful for application developers. So if you are looking into using PGP in some kind of application or server-side application, maybe SOP is a good fit for you. Can you hear me?
We heard you.
Okay.
Great. So if there's no one else in the queue, again, if you want to join the queue now, that's fine. If you want to join at the end, that's also fine. So if there's nobody else in queue, Justice, you're next up anyway. So I've given you permission for loading slides. They should appear. Okay.
Hi. So I'm going to talk about the test suite again. On the slide, there are two URLs. On the first one, you can see the current test suite results, updated whenever I get around to run the test suite again. And the slides will be uploaded to our website as well. So if you missed the last presentation, there are around 90 tests in the test suite currently. And all in all, we're feeding around 800 test vectors to every implementation. Some test vectors are, created by the test suite, and some test vectors are created by implementations. So the more implementations we add to the test suite, the more test vectors there will be. Is my video okay? I hope so.
So we don't actually see you, Justice, but we hear you fine, and there's some non-moving video of an avatar icon. But
that's odd. Well,
yeah.
Anyway.
But feel free to proceed. I mean, I think the audio is the more important thing anyway.
Yeah. So I'm happy to report that we found at least 92 bugs in 10 different implementations, which I'm very, very happy about. And I think it also improved implementations a lot and our understanding of the PGP ecosystem in general. And I'm very hopeful that it has already been helpful with the standardization process, because it highlights areas where the spec is somewhat fuzzy, and we could lend more guidance to implementations. So if you look at how the test suite works, we're doing black box testing, and we're using the stateless OpenPGP interface that Daniel introduced. It was created in the context of the test suite. So this is the main consumer, but I'm very happy with extending the SOP beyond the test suite. Many tests, there are two kinds of tests. One where the test suite creates test artifacts and feeds them to the implementations, and the other one where we do maybe more traditional interop testing, where we, for example, ask some implementation to encrypt a file, and then we try to decrypt it with every other implementation. And you can see an example of the how to use SOP. You can generate a key, sign a message with it, and then use a different implementation to verify the signature. If you look to the right, there is an example of the test, because if you look at the test results, it's a bit unwieldy and maybe overwhelming. To the left, you see the test artifact or the producer. Most tests start with the base case to establish that the kind of setting is sane and works as we expect. And then most of the time, if we have a consumer test, we start with a well-formed variant or a malformed variant, maybe some kind of weird or slightly out of spec variant. And then if you look at the columns, you see the consumers. And to the right, there is an expectation. So some of the test vectors have an expectation, or mostly my expectation, and or a comment. And the colors in the boxes indicate whether the implementation's outcome matches the expectations. So green background or earmark in the top left corner means the implementation matches the expectation, and a red background or an earmark in the top right corner means it did not. So we hope to use the test suite extensively in the process of producing the crypto refresh. It's a bit tricky because most artifacts in the case of consumer tests are created by Sequoia. And if Sequoia does not implement a feature yet, we can't use it to generate an artifact. But I'm not above simply using files to fill in the gaps where Sequoia does not or does not yet implement some feature. And then we can have a specific subset of tests that we somehow tag that are only relevant for the crypto refresh. And we can also test unreleased or in development versions of implementations and publish this subset of results in a different place. And hopefully, in the end, we'll get a well understood and easy to implement spec out of it, and also hopefully speed up adoption of the crypto refresh. So if you want to help, that would be great. So it would be very useful to come up with a list of relevant tests. And also, it would be great to get some help with actually writing these tests. That may be a bit big ask because the tests are written in Rust, but maybe people can still contribute at least ideas or specific guidance on what would be useful to test. And then once the tests are written and executed, reviewing the results and providing feedback, that is also a lot of work, and you could help with that too. And now, if you want to participate in this experiment as an implementer, that would be also great. And there are two problems. First, if you don't have a sub implementation, it would be great if you would write one. And then I would love to have specific instruction on how to get that implementation, how to build it, and most importantly, how to update the implementation. That is a bit of a problem right now for the test suite, because unfortunately, I'm the only one who runs the test suite, and I don't have a good trigger mechanism on when to run the test suite again. In general, if you want to participate, please get in touch and be responsive. That would be great. As a summary, this is a bit of a rehash of the last presentation. If you want to help, please suggest tests, or even better, write tests. You can open an issue in the issue tracker for that. If you want to participate as an implementation in the interop testing, that would be great. the best option is to implement the sub interface. I implemented sub interfaces for GPGME and RNP and Sequoia, and I'm kind of maintaining the sub interface for GPGME and RNP. And that could lead to me misrepresenting your implementation. And if I do, please talk to me, or even better, write your own implementation. And finally, I encode lots of my own expectations into the test suite, and I may be wrong about stuff. So if you disagree with some test results or with some expectations, please also talk to me. On the right, you see kind of a short how to get started with the implementation interop testing. And in general, this has been a bit of a one-man show, which is a bit unfortunate. I don't mind the work, but it would be great to get more people involved, and maybe we can have a bit of a chat on what the barriers are to joining and how we can improve that. And with that, I'd like to open up for questions.
So I just want to point out that the work Eustace has done here has really been super valuable to the community, and it actually is as easy as it shows to run the test suite. It's a pretty straightforward process. So I want to say a big thanks to Eustace for doing this. This is really critical for us. Ben, go ahead.
Going to basically say the same thing, not a question, but a huge thanks for getting the test suite together and maintaining it. I know some of the other IETF work we've done recently with like TLS and Quick have had a good interop test matrix with many different implementations, and that really improved the quality of the spec to have so many different implementations that were following with the spec and pointing out bugs or inconsistencies or incomplete parts of the spec. So it's really, really useful to have this sort of automated test suite available. So thank you again for doing it.
Okay, thanks, Justice. Again, people, you have links there. Please keep an eye on them and download it, try it. Okay, revoke slides. So I think, yes, I am vanishing momentarily. I've got about 2 minutes, so sorry. This is our agenda. We're at the AOB part now. So any other business? Anybody want to jump back in the queue and revisit topics we covered earlier? There's a bit of time. I have like 2 minutes, but you guys have now 50 minutes if you want.
And I'll be here after Stephen steps off if there is AOB going on. But if there is no other AOB, I'm happy to give y'all a chunk of the meeting time back. The weekly meetings of the design team have been ongoing. We spend about an hour every week together, and probably a significant amount of time more than that between the meetings, tweaking at the spec. So I think the design team folks might be meeting out. Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I skipped during the queue because it was just me, but I want to thank again the design team for all the great work they're doing. Do you have a sense for if we can try and extrapolate from the current rate of progress in the design team for looking forward, how do we have an estimate for when we'll be able to be going to, say, working group last call or anything like that?
Predicting the future is always hard, but I would hope that early in 2022 we'll have working group last call. I don't think we have a lot left, but you know, it's possible that we stumble on some of these last points.
Of course, yeah. Well, thanks. That's pretty reassuring to hear. So I look forward to it. And I think Jonathan was maybe in the queue.
The same question. It's been answered. Thanks.
Okay. I see Stephen has stepped away. I see Stephen has stepped away. Hello. So I see Stephen has stepped away. I don't know whether y'all can hear me.
Yeah. Yeah, we can hear you, Daniel.
Okay. Yeah, so it looks like Stephen has stepped away, but if we don't have more folks in the queue, Robin, I see you have your mic on. Robin or Jonathan, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I've been taking notes, but please check over the notes to make sure I captured what you said correctly.
Will do, and I will post those notes as appropriate later after the meeting. Thank you for taking notes. All right, well, I'm going to give folks the rest of the queue back, the rest of the time back here, if there's nobody else who wants to talk. We will continue with the design team meetings, and we will continue posting notes. And thanks for everybody for your input. I'm going to close this out and see if I can figure out how to.